If you have ever been treated like you were the extra piece in your own family. If you have ever been pushed aside so someone else could shine. Then listen closely, because what happened to me will sit in your chest for a long time. It starts with one sentence. And that sentence changed my whole life. My parents cut me out of Thanksgiving. No warning. No hesitation. Just my mom's calm, polished voice saying words that still burn. Your sister wants her boyfriend to make a good first impression. And having you there would make her look bad. I remember standing in my garage with grease still on my hands and cold air biting the back of my neck. I remember staring at the phone as the line went silent. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't defend myself. I just hung up and looked at the floor, as if maybe the concrete had answers it had been hiding from me. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Not even close. My name is Willow Carter. I am 29 years old. I am a mechanic. I spend more time under car hoods than under warm lights or holiday tables. People say I look softer than my job suggests. They say my long hair, tied back tight, and my eyes that always give away more than I want, make me look gentle even when there is engine grease across my cheek. But none of that has ever mattered to my family. To them, I have always been the one who fixes things, not the one who belongs. I grew up in a house where appearances meant everything. My mom curated our family the way people curate perfect online profiles. Perfect smiles. Perfect outfits. Perfect stories to tell friends. Perfect lies to hide the mess. And standing next to my little sister, Ava, the family's golden girl, the brand ambassador of our home, I was always the background character. Ava shined. Ava sparkled. Ava walked into rooms like applause was waiting for her. And most of the time, it was. Dad played along too. To him, a daughter with soft curls and a PR job was someone to brag about. A daughter who rebuilt engines and drove old trucks was useful, handy, reliable. Not gifted. Not talented. Just handy. I learned early not to challenge the Carter family narrative. Every time I did, I paid for it. So I stopped. I stayed quiet. I stayed strong. I stayed useful. When the sink leaked, I fixed it. When Ava dented her car, I drove across town at midnight to repair it. When my parents forgot to pay a bill, I stepped in and covered it before the fees hit. I poured so much of myself into them that I never noticed how empty I was becoming. The garage became my only safe place. The concrete floors. The smell of oil. The rumble of an engine waking up. Machines made sense in a way my family never did. Machines didn't get embarrassed by me. They didn't compare me to Ava. They didn't ask me to make myself smaller. They didn't pretend I was invisible unless they needed something. So when my mom uninvited me from Thanksgiving, it hurt, but it wasn't shocking. It was a familiar wound. A deep, dull ache I'd stopped complaining about years ago. She spoke in that same soft, polished tone she always used when she was about to say something cruel but wanted to sound graceful. Your sister wants her boyfriend to have the perfect first impression. She thinks having you there might complicate things. I stared at my phone for a long time. The shop lights buzzed above me. The cold wind pushed sharp air against the doors. It felt strange, realizing that my own family could cut me out of a holiday about gratitude. But as I stood there, something inside me clicked. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was more like a quiet tightening. Like a bolt that had been loose for years finally finding the right thread. A small, quiet clarity. I cleaned my tools. I locked the garage. I went home alone, and for the first time in my life, I wondered what it would feel like to build a life that didn't include them at all. The next morning, someone pounded on my door so hard the frame rattled. I was still half asleep when I opened it. My entire family stood on my porch. My mom. My dad. Ava? And Ava's boyfriend, the man my mom had apparently rearranged an entire holiday for. Their faces were red from cold and anger. Mom didn't even say hello. Why did you tell people you weren't invited? She snapped. I didn't tell anyone, I said. Your grandmother called us, Mom barked. Do you know how humiliated we were? Humiliated. That word again. The word she used whenever she needed me to disappear so Ava could shine. Dad shook his head like I was a child who'd disappointed him again. You always twist things, Willow. Always making us look like the bad guys. Ava crossed her arms, wrapped in a cream coat that had probably never touched dirt. She looked me up and down, my pajama pants, my old t-shirt, as if I had committed a personal offense by existing. It's unbelievable you're doing this right now, she said. You know how much pressure I'm under. I almost laughed. Pressure? The pressure she created herself. But before I could respond, her boyfriend stepped forward. He had a clean-cut look. Tall. Confident. The kind of man who fit perfectly next to Ava in pictures that made other people jealous. But the way he looked at me wasn't cruel. It was curious. Wait, he said suddenly. Willow Carter. The one who restored that '72 Charger. The porch went still. Ava blinked. What? No. She just fixes cars. Logan, because that was his name, shook his head. No. She builds them. Restores them. I followed her work for months. For a moment, the world stopped. Not because he recognized me. But because my family didn't. They had no idea what I was capable of. They didn't even know the work I was most proud of. Ava flushed red. You're joking. Logan shook his head again. My dad scoffed. My mom frowned. Ava looked like she wanted the ground to open and swallow her embarrassment. Logan wasn't mocking me. He was impressed. And my family hated it. Hated that for the first time, someone saw me before they told him who I was supposed to be. Mom regained control first. That's nice, she said stiffly, but we came to talk about responsibilities. Responsibilities. The chain they kept wrapped around my ankle. Dad cleared his throat. The roof is leaking again. We need you to fix it today. Ava added, and I need money for decorations for my holiday event. Can you transfer it by this weekend? I stared at her. You're asking me for money after uninviting me. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. This is separate. Mom nodded sharply. Family helps family. I almost laughed. Family helps family. Except when that family is me. Logan looked between us. Are you serious? He whispered. After everything you just said to her. Dad snapped. This is none of your concern. But Logan didn't budge. He looked at me again. Really looked. Is this normal for them? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Ava exhaled sharply. Can we focus, Willow? I need the money. Dad already told everyone you'd handle the roof. Don't make us look stupid. Image. Always image. Something inside me snapped into place. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. Strong. No, I said. Mom blinked. What did you say? I'm not fixing the roof. I'm not paying for decorations. I'm not covering bills. Not anymore. The silence cracked across the porch. Dad stepped forward. After everything we've done for you, I cut him off. Everything you've done for me? Feeding me as a child. That was parenting. Not alone. Ava scoffed. You're being ridiculous. No, I repeated, I'm being done. Mom raised her voice. We raised you. And I'm grateful, I said. But you don't get to use that as a lifetime contract. The cold wind moved between us. Logan exhaled, almost relieved someone finally said it. Ava turned on him. Why are you taking her side? Because she isn't wrong, he said simply. And just like that, the family hierarchy cracked. Their scripts fell apart. Their certainty dissolved. Dad growled, "You'll regret this." But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. "Leave," I said. They didn't move. Until Logan stepped slightly toward me, not them. And that broke whatever hold they had left. They stormed off. Snow followed them like cold smoke. I watched their car disappear down the street. And I felt the strangest thing. Peace. Real peace. But that peace would not last. Not when they came back. Not when the truth ripped open years of buried history. Not when they returned on Christmas Eve with the words that would change everything again. Because the moment Christmas Eve arrived, the peace I had built around myself began to shake like thin glass in a winter storm. Snow was beginning to fall in thick sheets over the garage, turning the world outside into a quiet white curtain, but inside, the heaters hummed, the string lights glowed, and laughter filled the room in a way that made my chest warm. For the first time since childhood, Christmas didn't hurt. It didn't feel like a performance. It didn't feel like something I had to endure. It felt real. It felt alive. Mr. Bennett was telling stories about delivering letters in snowstorms back in the 80s. The teens from the shelter were teasing each other over burnt rolls, smiling like they belonged somewhere. Even little Lily, barely 7, ran around with a cookie shaped like a crooked star, her giggles echoing off the tools and metal shelves, and I stood there, holding a warm cup of cider, looking at these people who had walked into my life without conditions, without demands, without scripts, without manipulation. A chosen family. A real one. But that peace lasted only minutes. Because suddenly, the garage door rattled so hard it made everyone freeze. The sound was violent, sharp, angry. Not a knock. Not a visitor. A warning. Before I could even step forward, the doors flew open and winter slammed into the room like a fist. And standing in that cold explosion of air were 3 shadows I knew too well. My mom. My dad. My sister. Their faces twisted with fury so deep it almost looked like grief. My mother pointed at me like she was accusing me of a crime. "You humiliated us," she snapped, her voice slicing through the warmth like a knife. "Do you know what our relatives said after you abandoned Thanksgiving? After you told them lies about us?" The room fell silent. Every person inside turned toward them. My dad stepped forward with a sneer that made my stomach twist. "You think you're better than us now?" he barked. "Now that you have your little garage and you're following?" Ava shoved past them, mascara streaking down her cheeks like she had been crying for hours. "Logan left," she said in a cracked whisper. "He walked out on Christmas. He said he needed space from my family and from me." She glared at me with pure rage. "This is your fault." A low murmur went through the room. Even the teenagers froze. Tasha gently pulled Lily behind her. Mr. Bennett stood slowly, leaning hard on his cane. "I didn't make him leave," I said quietly. "You did that." Ava's voice rose into a scream. "You took him from me." But then, a fourth voice entered the room from behind them. Calm. Firm. Heavy enough to stop the storm. "No," Logan said, stepping into the doorway, snow dusted across his coat. "She didn't." Ava whipped around. "Why are you here?" Logan looked at her the way someone looks at the edge of a cliff, careful, knowing a wrong move could send everything crashing. But he didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He didn't dramatize. He spoke with a quiet honesty that made the hair on my arms rise. "Because I wanted to be someplace real tonight," he said. "Someplace genuine. Someplace that isn't built on image and pressure." He looked around the garage, at the teens, at Mr. Bennett, at the warm glow of the lights, then at me. "She built something here. Something good. Something honest." My mother gasped, insulted. Excuse me. Logan didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on mine. I'm sorry for everything you've carried, he said softly. Sorry for how long you lived in a family dynamic that never deserved you. The room went still. My father scoffed. This is ridiculous. We are her family. Not you. Logan didn't flinch. Family doesn't treat her like a tool. Family doesn't shame her for existing. Ava's eyes filled with tears that weren't from sadness, they were from losing control. You're choosing her over me, she whispered. Logan shook his head. I'm choosing basic decency. The balance shifted. Again. And this time, the shift hit them harder. My mother stepped forward, desperation leaking into her voice. Willow, tell him he's wrong. Tell him you didn't pay our bills. Tell him you didn't fix our house. Tell him we didn't rely on you. Her words shook. Her hands shook. Everything in her shook because she could feel their perfect narrative cracking in front of witnesses. I stepped behind my workbench, pulled open a drawer, and took out a brown envelope I had prepared weeks earlier. I had made copies for myself because I knew, deep down, one day I would need proof. These are the payments, I said quietly. Everything I've covered for you, for years. My dad snatched the envelope with a smirk, until he opened it. And then his smirk fell apart. Insurance bills. Repair receipts. Emergency rental fees. Medical payments. Utility balances. Every dollar. Every forgotten moment. Every time they relied on me and pretended they didn't. My mother's face drained of color. Ava's lips trembled. You kept track? My mother whispered. No, I said. I kept boundaries. You just never noticed until they finally mattered to someone else. The silence was suffocating. My dad's voice shook. You're unbelievable. We raised you. You owe us respect. I owe you honesty, I said softly. And here it is. I'm done. Ava screamed, the sound cracking like glass. You ruined everything. Logan stepped in front of her, calm but firm. Stop blaming her for your choices. My mother lunged for the papers. No one will believe this, she hissed. I nodded toward the room. They already do. Every face in the garage held the truth. Not anger. Just clarity. Just disappointment in the people who came to tear down a woman who had done nothing but give. My dad's voice dropped to a dangerous low. You will regret this, Willow. I shook my head. I regret letting it go on this long. Ava turned to Logan again, panic flooding her voice. Please come home, she begged. Please, Logan. This isn't who we are. But Logan looked at her with the softest sadness I had ever seen on a man's face. It's exactly who you have always been, he said. I just didn't see it until now. And then Ava broke. Something inside her crumbled. Her face twisted. Her breath shook. Her voice cracked in a way that wasn't anger anymore, it was fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing the perfect story. Fear of losing the man she thought would make her look better. So you're choosing her garage over me? She cried. Logan shook his head gently. I'm choosing a place where people treat each other with respect. My mother gasped. My father cursed under his breath. Ava looked small. Smaller than I had ever seen her. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I felt calm. I felt whole. I felt free. I stepped aside and opened the garage door wider. Leave, I said. For a moment they stood frozen. Then, for the first time ever, they listened. The cold swallowed them when they stepped outside. Their voices disappeared. Their footsteps faded into the snow. Their silhouettes were swallowed by the dark. And when the door closed again, it felt like sealing off a chapter of my life that had been crushing me for years. The warmth of the garage returned slowly. People breathed again. Conversations resumed. Laughter, soft and cautious, rose from the tables. Logan stayed a little longer, helping Mr. Bennett to his car, helping the teens pack leftovers, making sure everyone got home safely. Later, when the crowd thinned, he came back to me. He didn't touch me. He didn't assume. He simply gave me a long, steady look. "You built a good life," he said quietly. "Don't let anyone take it from you. Not even family." And then he left. The days that followed were quiet. Peaceful. Healing. My parents didn't call. Ava didn't text. The silence from them felt like fresh air instead of punishment. Work grew. The garage found its rhythm. The teens came back for Saturday lessons. Tasha and Lily visited with thank you notes. Even the winter's sun felt softer. Weeks passed. Then months. And slowly, I began to feel free in ways I didn't even know were possible. A year later, I stood outside my garage again, the snow falling softly around me. My life wasn't perfect. But it was mine. Chosen. Earned. Built with my own hands. And just when I thought the past was finished with me, a letter arrived. A letter that changed everything again. A letter with handwriting I knew too well. A letter that made my breath stop. A letter that said only one line, a line that would pull me back into a storm I thought I had escaped. Because the moment I opened that envelope, the moment I saw that familiar handwriting, my entire body went cold even though the heater inside my garage hummed warm. It was a small envelope, thin, soft at the corners, the kind that looked handled too many times before reaching my door. My fingers shook as I slid my thumb under the seal. The paper inside was folded twice, neat, careful, almost trembling the way a guilty voice trembles before it speaks. And on the paper, in my mother's handwriting, was a single line that punched the breath straight out of my chest. "We need to talk before it's too late." I stood there frozen. Too late for what? Too late for apologies? Too late for repairs? Too late for them to twist things again? Or too late for something much darker? I read the sentence over and over, trying to understand what part of my life I was being dragged back into. For a long moment, I didn't move. The snow outside drifted against the garage door. The lights above flickered. The world felt too still, too fragile. Then I took a long breath, folded the note again, and sat down on my old work stool, trying to calm the storm that had started swirling inside my chest. I hadn't heard from them in a year. Not a call. Not a text. Not a "how are you?" Not a birthday message. Nothing. The silence had been its own healing. And now suddenly, they needed to talk. I didn't know if I wanted to answer. I didn't know if my heart was ready. But I did know that life has a way of forcing you into conversations you think you've already walked away from. The next morning, I found out what too late meant. It came in the form of another knock on my door. But this time, it was not loud. It was not angry. It was soft. Slow. Almost weak. When I opened it, Ava was standing there. She didn't look like the polished woman who always sparkled in perfect outfits. She didn't look like the girl who thought the world owed her admiration. She looked small. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were swollen. Her coat was zipped wrong. Her face looked older, tired, worn from something much heavier than broken pride. "Can I come in?" she whispered. For the first time, I saw my sister not as a rival. Not as a shadow over me. Not as a brand ambassador of the Carter image. But as a human being who looked like she was falling apart. I stepped aside. She came in slowly, sitting at the old wooden table near the tool bench. Her hands trembled when she tried to speak. "Mom is sick," she said. I felt my chest tighten. I didn't speak. "It's bad," she continued. It's cancer." She wiped her face. "She didn't want to tell you. Dad didn't want you to know. They thought you wouldn't care." I didn't move. I didn't react. I just listened as the truth cracked open. She wrote that letter herself, Ava whispered. She said she couldn't leave this world with things like this. She said she needed to see you. She said she didn't want to regret anything else. I sat down across from her. The garage felt cold even with heat spilling from the vents. All the anger I had carried, all the hurt, all the betrayal, it didn't disappear. But it didn't rise either. It just settled inside me like a heavy stone. Why did she send you? I finally asked. Ava closed her eyes. Because I told her I would try. I owed her that. I owed you that too. Her tone wasn't entitled. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't superior. It was tired. Defeated. Honest. I didn't speak. She continued. You don't have to come. I won't blame you. She won't blame you. But she's scared, Willow. I've never seen her scared. My breath shook. In that moment, I remembered every harsh word, every manipulation, every time she made me feel like a burden. But I also remembered other things. The early mornings she brushed my hair before school. The way she tucked blankets around me when storms scared me at night. The way she taught me how to braid. The way she smiled when I took my first steps. Families are complicated. Sometimes they break you. Sometimes they lift you. Sometimes they do both at the same time. I looked at Ava. Where is she? At the hospital, she whispered. She wants to see you. I stood. My heart pounded. My stomach tightened. But my feet moved anyway. Because sometimes life gives you choices, and sometimes it gives you responsibilities that your soul cannot ignore. The hospital smelled like cleaning chemicals and fear. The halls were too white. Too quiet. Too cold. Ava led me to room 214. My mother was lying in a bed, her skin pale, her hair thinner, her breath shallow. But her eyes were still sharp, still proud, still familiar. When she saw me, she froze. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Willow, she breathed, reaching out with a trembling hand. I walked slowly to her side. She squeezed my fingers with a strength she barely had. I'm sorry, she whispered before I could say anything. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry for everything. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. I had imagined apologies before. I had pictured giving speeches about my pain. I had rehearsed lines about boundaries and respect. But in that moment, none of my rehearsed sentences mattered. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need speeches. Sometimes it just needs presence. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. I was wrong. I was wrong for so long. Tears fell from her eyes onto the stiff white sheets. I pushed you away because I was afraid, she said. Afraid that you didn't need me. Afraid that you were stronger than me, afraid you would leave first. She closed her eyes. So I tried to control everything. And I broke everything instead. I felt something inside me crack open, not in pain, but in understanding. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. I missed you, she whispered. Every day. I squeezed her hand. She cried harder. Ava cried too. Even my father, who sat quietly in the corner, wiped his eyes when he thought no one was looking. For hours, we talked. Not about blame. Not about the past. Not about debts. But about truth. Real truth. The kind that is heavy, painful, needed. She told me she knew she failed me. She told me she wished she had been better. She told me she was proud of me even if she never said it before. She told me she loved me. Her voice was weak, but her words were strong. And for the first time in my life, I let myself hear them. In the weeks that followed, I visited her often. I fixed the loose chair in her room. I brought her warm socks. I held her hand. I listened to her stories. Ava came too. And slowly, painfully, the three of us learned how to be something that looked like a family instead of a performance. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. When she passed, the room was quiet. Peaceful. She went gently, holding my hand. And in that moment, I felt a strange mix of heartbreak and healing. At her memorial, people talked about her strength, her charm, her beauty. But I spoke about something else. I spoke about growth. About forgiveness. About the messy truth that some people spend their whole lives trying to be perfect, and others spend their lives trying to be enough. And sometimes, both people are the same person. After the memorial, Dad approached me. His face was tired. His voice was soft. "I want to be better," he said. "If you'll let me." I didn't give him an answer that day. But I didn't walk away either. Sometimes healing takes place not in words but in the space we allow for possibility. Weeks later, Logan visited the garage again. He looked at me with the same quiet respect he always had. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm trying," I said. He nodded. "That's enough." And somehow, those words felt like the truest comfort. Life didn't magically fix itself. My family didn't turn perfect. My heart didn't forget everything. But I learned something important. You cannot control who hurts you. But you can choose who gets to stay. You can choose who gets access to your peace. You can choose your family, even if part of it is the one you build yourself in a garage with mismatched chairs and oil stains on the floor. And you can choose forgiveness, not for them, but for yourself, so you can finally breathe again. If you have ever been the forgotten one, the used one, the quiet one who held everything together, then hear me when I say this: you deserve peace. You deserve respect. And you deserve a life where you are not afraid to take up space. My name is Willow. I was the daughter who held a whole family together without recognition. I was the girl who was left out of Thanksgiving. I was the sister no one bragged about. But now, I am the woman who built a life with her own hands. A life that finally feels like mine. A life filled with people who see me, who value me, who stay. And this is where my story closes, with truth, with growth, with peace, and with the hope that someone listening tonight feels a little less alone. Thank you for listening to my story. And if you felt even a small part of your own life inside my words, then please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below so more people can find comfort, strength, and hope. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And you matter.